Hello everyone, Crafty Josephine here again. Today I'm going to show you how I make my Scarecrow Gnome. Alright, so let's get started. The first thing I'm going to do is cut out the body of my gnome, which is going to be made out of denim. I've used old jeans from my family, from the thrift shop, everything. So if that's what you have to use, go for it. I did just happen to pick up a couple of yards of denim on clearance, so that's what I'm going to use. And then this is my pattern, and I'm going to make this available to you on my blog, so you can go there to get the pattern. And I'm just going to trace this on the back side. You can tell I've used this pattern a few times, huh? And then this is for the bottom of the cone. Get that cut out. I'm just going to cut that selvage edge off. The next thing I'm going to do is cut out the hat, which actually I use the same pattern that I used for the body to make the hat, just without a base. And I have burlap that I'm going to use to cut the hat out. Selvage edge again that I'm just going to try to avoid. Trying to cut on camera is not easy. Can you guys see where I drew? You can, a little bit, right? Piece it's done. Okay, so the last piece of fabric I'm going to cut out for the Scarecrow is his arms, which I just do one long arm. I'm going to use an old shirt that was one of my son's that doesn't fit him anymore. Typically I would say just try to pick a small plaid because the gnome is going to be little. He's I think 6 or 7 inches tall. So you don't want a really big plaid, it's not going to show up. This is actually a little bit bigger than I would prefer, but I'm going to try to place it you know, if I place it all here, then I would only have that brown bit as his arm, and I want to try to get, you know, a few different colors of stripes, so I'm going to place it so that I'm getting some different colors in there. And you can do the same with yours, just place it so you get the colors that you want. And I tried to stick to a plaid that had some fall colors in it here with the brown and the gold. But, you know, you can do whatever you like. If you like buffalo plaid, you could get buffalo plaid. Okay, so I've gone ahead and I've pinned my cone pieces together, the base and the quarter circle, and I'm going to go ahead and start sewing. If you don't sew in circles a lot, you'll see that it can be a little bit tricky. The fabric's going to want to crease a lot. I've done it so many times now that it's not really a big thing, but if you haven't done it a lot, you know, just be ready to kind of smooth the creases out of the way to keep from sewing the creases down. So I'll just keep kind of moving my fabric so I don't sew over any creases. And that gets easier to do as you remove the pins too, to move those creases out of the way. Trying to keep my hands out of my way for you. So another thing I'm also going to do is, I've had enough of these hats fray on me after I turn them inside out. I'm going to go ahead and also do a zigzag stitch to help keep it from fraying on me. Okay, so now I'm going to go ahead and sew the arms of my Scarecrow Gnome, and I'm back on the straight stitch, and I only do about 1/4 inch, so same with the body. So you can see when I turn this back right side out that I'm going to have this rough edge for the Scarecrow's arms. I like that on the Scarecrow because I like him to look a little bit, you know, rough and ragged around the edges. But all depending on what gnome I'm doing, if I want it to be really clean looking, then I might fold that edge under and sew it down. But I like the scruffy look on the Scarecrow. Alright, so now that I've got all these pieces sewn up, I'm just going to go ahead and do a little cutting. I'm going to cut near the point there to get rid of some of that bulk when I turn it inside out, although most of that won't be seen anyways. And then cut some corners around this seam. Of course, be careful not to cut into your seam. So I'm just going to fill up a baggie with rice. And I just use about 1 scoopful from my rice jar. No, that's not a very exact measurement. The Scarecrow doesn't take very much. I'm trying to think of how much that would be. I would say somewhere close to maybe like a 1/3 cup if you really wanted to get exact. Because he's not real top heavy, he's not going to fall over real easy, but this is just enough to keep him from falling over. And then I just try to smush it. Let me see. Turn that down. Try to smush it into like a circle shape as best I can. And I close it up with a rubber band. You could use beans, or if you have those plastic pellets they use in the craft stores. I'll just cut that top part off. And that will be the base. And now I just need to stuff. Okay, so I like to put a couple of patches on my Scarecrow's hat. So I just cut off a little bit of both the denim fabrics and the denim fabric and the plaid fabric. Just trying to find a spot that I like. Try to cut the squares on the sides. Then I'll be using my embroidery floss to attach those onto the hat. Alright, so I'm just going to pin these 2 patches about where I want them to go. If you wanted to, you could always embroider them on before you sewed it up and just kind of try to place where you want them to be before it turns into a cone shape. But I don't mind doing it while it's a hat. So, and then you know, you can choose how many threads you're going to use to do your stitching. I like about 2 threads. And I just do the back stitch. And I go all the way around. I put a knot in my thread. And then I usually just like to start where the 2 intersect, because that way, you know, I don't have to worry about them moving around too much after that. But then, in addition to doing the back stitch, I like to do these sideways stitches. I don't know if they have a name. Maybe you guys know what the name is. That just makes me think of old-timey patches. You'll see what I mean here in a minute. Maybe you guys know what the name for that is, if it has a name. Alright, so I'm just going to stuff my different pieces. I'm just using the premium fiberfill that I got from Joann's. And usually that comes with a stick in it that you can use kind of to help get into those harder to reach places. using the front, it's going to get covered by the beard. And I have my thread. I'm just going to stitch this on a couple times. And this is going to get covered pretty much by the hat, so you don't have to worry about your stitching being really pretty. So next I'm going to cut the beard for my gnome, and I like to use the white on my Scarecrow. I never measure or use a pattern, I just kind of eyeball it. He's a pretty small gnome, so I'm not going to make a real big beard, and I always cut it on the back with an X-Acto knife. Cutting it with scissors, I mean, it's going to be messy no matter what you do, but it's going to be really messy if you cut it with scissors. My X-Acto knife is a little bit dull, so I usually have to go over it a couple times. And try not to cut in the direction of your fingers so that you don't have to worry about cutting them. That looks pretty good. Always better, I guess, to err on the side of making it too long, and you can always trim it down some, than making it too short and then not being able to use it. Although I suppose you could always make it into a mustache or something. So that's going to go right there, and then his hat's here. Looking pretty good. I'm going to show you what I do for his arms, for his straw hands. So I just have a bunch of leftover raffia from a different project. I don't even remember, honestly, it's been so long. But I just have it on hand. So I use that, and I cut the pieces. Don't measure those either, but about, I would say, like 1 centimeter long. You know, some can be longer, some can be shorter. And I just cut a whole bunch of those. I never know exactly how much to cut, but until I have a decent looking pile. Let's start with that. So I kind of like to get some ready because I'm going to have to be ready to grab it as soon as I get my gob of glue in there. More in focus. So I just put kind of a hefty glob of glue, and then I grab a bunch of this and I stick it in there, and try to move it around so that it ends up getting some of the glue stuck to the plaid fabric, because if it's just stuck to the cotton, then it could just kind of pop out with the cotton. But if it's stuck also to the shirt, then it's all of it should stay in place and not fall out on you. My shirt is kind of tucked in. Alright, so the next thing I'm going to do is to sew on the hat. Just pin this so it's not quite so hard to deal with. I'm going to put a little bit more stuffing in there. Okay, I think that's pretty good now. So now I'm going to stitch the hat to the gnome. And you're going to want to try to find a thread that's close in color, if you got it, to the hat. And just catching a little bit of the hat in there. Because obviously you don't really want to see that, you just want to see the hat. You want that to be the focus. I'm going to need more thread, I don't have enough, but I'm just going to keep going around making stitches and attaching that hat. So now I'm going to go ahead and pop his nose on. And this is a 1/2 inch wooden ball that I just got at Hobby Lobby, and they come in a package. But you can also get, I've also used the 3/4 inch, so it's just a little bit bigger. I think they both look cute, but since I have this small one and he's kind of a small gnome, I'm just going to go ahead and use this one up. And I just put a little dot of glue, and I like mine right up against the hat. In fact, for a little bit of reinforcement, I usually put a dot of glue in there. It looks like it did catch the hat a little, so that's good. It's coming together. So I kind of like that the burlap frays a little bit. You know, I think that makes it look all the cuter, but I usually just like to get some of these longer ones and just trim them down just a little bit so they're not so long. Like that. But I like that little fray. I think that's cute. And of course you're forever pulling on the loose gnome fur. Alright, so the only thing left to do now is to make the crow that I like to put on his arm. And you just need a little bit of black felt. It's nice because you get to use up all your scraps for this. And what I'm going to do is fold it in half. Should be good, and pin it. Alright, so I've cut out my little crow that'll be folded in half, and then I'll stitch him up and sew him together. But first I want to also cut out his wings, so I'm going to use that marker again and just cut 2 of these wings out. I can get the pattern picked up. There we go. Working with itty bitty pieces. Good thing is you get to use up your little scraps of felt that you never thought you would use for anything. Alright, now that I've gotten my crow all cut out, I'm going to use 2 strands of my embroidery floss in black to sew him up. You could attach his eyes now if you wanted. We're going to do bead eyes. I've just had these beads for like a really, wow, they'll show up kind of funny on camera, don't they? I've had these for a really long time, so I don't even know if they sell these ones anymore. But, you know, any beads that you would like for crow eyes would work. And I actually just use a blanket stitch to sew him up. While he still has a little bit of an opening, I'm going to go ahead and put some stuffing inside, just a little bit, to give him a little bit of volume. And I just use my needle to help get it in there because it's such a tiny piece to stuff. Now you could tie a knot if you want to, but what I'm going to do is just insert my needle inside and come up about where I want to attach the wings on one side, and then I usually do 2, maybe 3 stitches to attach the wing at the top. And I just go back and forth from one side to the other. And these little pieces of the fiber filler are kind of getting to me, so I'm just going to very carefully cut some of those off, get them out of my way. Now that I've done that, another thing I can do while I still have a long enough thread is go back in with my needle and come back out where I want the eye to go. I think I've had these beads for probably over 10 years, and I just pick a couple that I like, and actually this needle isn't going to be small enough to get through those beads, so I'm going to have to grab another needle. Alright, so I found a smaller needle that's going to fit through that small little bead hole that I have. Alright, now that I've got both those sewn on, and I still have a decent amount of thread left, I'm going to have my needle come out from the bottom, and I'm going to go ahead and sew him right onto the arm of the scarecrow. I'm going to catch just a little bit of the felt and just a little bit of his plaid shirt so that the stitching won't be very noticeable. Oops. Once I feel like he's on there well, I can just knot that up. I'm going to try to get rid of a little bit more of that excess stuffing. There we go. And we are done. We got his nose on, we got his crow. What I like to do too, once I get the crow on, at least when I'm sitting him wherever he's going to go, is I'll try to open up those wings a little bit too. That helps make it a little easier to identify it as a crow. His little eyeballs. He's pretty much finished. Oops. This way. And there he is. One finished Scarecrow Gnome. And of course you could always change up what color beard he has or any of that good stuff. Well, thanks for joining me, and if you like this gnome and want to see more, please like and subscribe.